I take my role in that classroom super seriously. Children that perhaps wouldn't normally participate often put their hand up to come up to the front. We've got to get away from that. To be successful, you have to have gone to university. The level of debt that young people are coming out with, again, makes me feel really sick. It's just making sure that children have options. I have written business plans for the most bizarre of businesses. The principles of setting up a business are exactly the same. Speed dating. It was a bona fide business that made money. It was hugely profitable.
I cannot stress how rewarding it is. That could have helped her immeasurably.
Yeah.
That's how it is, isn't it?
That's how it is. This is John.
And this is Nick.
And this is How It Is.
So, today we've got a very special guest, and she needs no introduction, really. She's looking sensational, and it's Jayne Brewer from no less To Be Enterprising and Bumbles of Honeywood, is it classed as?
That's it.
And so, let's start with, what's your background?
So my background is, I did sort of follow quite a traditional academic pathway. So school, sixth form, university. I went to Bath to study economics and international relations. I went on to do my master's in Bristol in marketing. And that's kind of where I started to think about what I wanted to do in the future.
Okay.
So then I went to work for a small consultancy practice, and I was there for about 13 years. And a lot of what I did was around entrepreneurship, writing business plans for students who were setting up their own business.
Business plan? We've never done a business plan.
I know. Well, most people don't. So I used to write them knowing full well that once they'd been submitted for a bank account or for a grant, that they would just get shoved in the drawer and nobody'd look at them again. So, but that was my first introduction.
So, which begs the question. So did you write your own business
I
plan?
absolutely did.
But did you follow anyone?
I absolutely did. So I kind of got my own contracts within about 2 years with the Welsh Government to deliver business support. And I have written business plans for the most bizarre of businesses, like some really, really bizarre ones, like adult toys. Then other ones like for accountancy practices and dog walkers.
I'm just trying to think how a business plan for adult toys would start.
Well, you have to do everything that you would do for any other business. You have your executive summary. You have to decide who your target market is. You have to describe the product. You have to look at your price point.
Describing the
you have
product.
To think about. You have to think about what marketing channels you'll use. So yeah, it's what I realised in that process of writing business plans for so many different businesses is actually the principles of setting up a business are exactly the same.
We help businesses, mainly in the automotive sector, write business plans. Nearly every car dealer in the UK does not have a business plan. And we concentrate on quite a few other sectors. So maybe if you want a little sideline, maybe we should give you a shout.
I think people used to think that a business plan needs to be a super complex document. Now, it depends on what you're writing that business plan for. Are you writing it for investment? Are you writing it for a loan? Are you writing it for your purposes to actually decide how you're going to grow this business? And actually, we'd get to the end of the process of writing a business plan, and sometimes they'd say, actually, that was great. It's forced me to think about some things that I wouldn't normally think about.
Absolutely.
So the complexity of it obviously depends on the reason for writing it, but you wouldn't build a house without architectural drawings. Don't start building your business. And it comes a point where you have to stop writing your business plan and just JFDI, just get on with it, just keep going. Because it's only when you're in the business do you realise what's going to work and what's not. And we've seen that so many times.
Absolutely. Something we try and do is make as many mistakes as we possibly can, and we learn from it.
So after a couple of years in writing like business plan after business plan, I thought I'd really like to set up my own business. Mm-hmm. And I come from a family that is, categorically they're not entrepreneurial. But actually this whole process of understanding enterprise and the entrepreneurial mindset made me think, well, as long as you have a product or service and you have people to pay for it, you have a business. Yeah. It's as simple as that. Yeah. Okay, obviously the intricacies and the risk associated is very different depending on what you're doing. So I was determined to set up my own business, and having moved back from Bristol, and working in Swansea for about 2 years, I thought I've got the right business that I want to set up because it doesn't exist in Swansea. It's something that I can do in the evenings that's legal, that won't cost me an awful lot of money and doesn't need an awful lot of intelligence. And I set up Swansea's first speed dating company. So
really?
I ran that for 10 years in Swansea. So I used to run an event once a month.
Yeah.
So they'd be in, do you remember Cafe Mambo?
I remember Cafe Mambo, yeah.
Mambo. So we used to host events in Cafe Mambo and down in Capassa, which is now Peppermint.
Right.
And we'd have up to 60 single people dating in one night. So it was really profitable. It was...
And then the phone came along and Tinder.
Yeah. And it's weird, right, John? Because a lot of people do say you should bring speed dating back because everybody is so... disillusioned now with online dating. Yeah. And actually it was what I was determined to set up was a really safe way for people to meet others, which it was. And also there wasn't that stigma of the guy that I'm chatting to in the bar, is he single? Everyone in that room was single. Yeah. Well, we hope they were. Yeah. But they would have risked being spotted by somebody that they know if they weren't single.
That's true.
So it was a really nice, safe environment. You'd date somebody for 3 minutes and you'd move on. So if you were not quite getting that spark, it was called spark dating. If you weren't getting that spark, it was 3 minutes. You didn't have to sit uncomfortably with somebody for a...
And did you meet your husband speed dating?
No, I didn't.
Oh, that would have been lovely, that would have been kind of like, you know, the holy grail, wouldn't it?
That would have been great. But we set up loads of couples, had loads of, quite a few weddings,
so
quite a few babies. So you were the Cilla Black
of Swansea.
Do you know, they call me Cilla Jack.
I love it. A Jack, by the way, is somebody who lives in Swansea. It's the Swansea Jack. Just to explain.
But it was brilliant. And I used to speak to schools and colleges about that as a business idea because they used to laugh. They used to think, oh, this is really silly. But it was a bona fide business that made money. It was hugely profitable. We didn't pay for, we never had to pay for the venue. Venues loved us going in there and bringing loads of nervous daters who often did need a little bit of Dutch courage before they did date. So I love talking about that as a concept because it shows how easy entrepreneurship can be, how accessible it can be. And I encourage people, I did that in my spare time. That was just a little side hustle. So I do encourage people to think about what do they love doing? Could they make money out of it?
Yeah.
And I know you love compliance. Yeah. And you're making a very successful business out of it.
In truth, that me and Nick were, good at what we did. We were in finance. We were in automotive finance, and we just realised that the independent automotive car dealer was overlooked, if you like. And we just said, we need to help these guys. And that's what we did. And everybody went, oh, you found this niche, you found, and it was like, no, we kind of fell into it.
Yeah.
And that was what it was. If truth be told, I still kind of think, I pinch myself every day and it's like fake it till you've made it, because I don't get that we got all this. I don't get that we got this podcast, but, I'll never be happy. I'm always pushing it. I must stress, I never wanted to be self-employed. I always wanted to be PAYE. I'm nice. I had my holidays, I had my benefits. Everything was hunky-dory. And it was only because of, as I say, beginning of lockdown, my father had died, I'd had kidney stones. You name it that went wrong, it went wrong. I had to make it work.
Yeah.
And that was often, the determination.
Yeah, and often those businesses will come out of adversity. Yeah. I've seen amazing people go on and run their own business after they've been made redundant, for instance, and really that's been the push that they have needed, or they've made a decision, right, it's time to do this on my own. It is every day I don't think people appreciate how much stress. I go into the office and I see the mortgages that I'm responsible for paying, and I'm super lucky with my team. I've got a good team. But it's reliance on so many other people. Absolutely. It is reliance on so many other people. And I think I'm listening to a really good book at the moment by Mel Robbins called Let Them. Yep. The Let Them theory. And loads of people will have heard of it. It's absolutely amazing. And it's very much about not focusing on what other people think and do and just concentrating on what you have control over.
I think we said this in the John Wilson thing.
Okay.
That one of the things that I'm very, very good at, which Nick isn't, is if I can't control it, I do not give a fuck.
Yeah.
I don't care. It doesn't bother me. It's, if anything, if you can control it, that's when you worry about, that's when you're concerned, that's when you angle it. Anything else, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's difficult. I'm learning because I'm very much a people pleaser, and I want to, I like to be liked.
Yeah.
I like to be liked.
But it's good that you listen to or, read self-development, and a lot of entrepreneurs, we all listen to it. If you go into a breakout room, there's an actual shelf full of self-development there. Yeah.
And I think if things like Shoe Dog, the Phil Knight story, just the Nike story, incredible.
Yes.
And I'm listening to it, and I feel sick at certain points because of the risk that they took.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's reassuring. I mean, my business is no way that scale, but it's reassuring to hear that it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, absolutely. And you use the word risk, and there's a lot of risk. We've risked a lot, more than my wife knows about. I know that.
Yeah, and that's not unusual, is it? And I think...
What's the riskiest thing you've done? What don't you want to say? In business, by the way.
I don't really take major
risks.
risks.
It's just payroll.
I don't really take major
payroll,
risks.
cash flow, it's all that. And I think, I do see, I like taking a risk.
I think probably the biggest risk I did take was joining a startup.
Yeah.
I was at Gower College, head of employer development, great job, really enjoying it. I had 2 little boys within a year, and the youngest was coming up to a year, and the other one was nearly 2.
And I thought, do you know what?
And and I was approached about the role, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is like a dream opportunity for me, absolute dream opportunity, doing something that I firmly believe in, that I didn't have when I was in school. That so many people, you even said it after the session, I wish that we'd had this when I was in school, because there is an alternative path for a lot of people. It doesn't have to be straight to, to academic, into higher education. Apprenticeships, that type of thing. It's just making sure that children have options. So that was probably the biggest risk I took. I've got a really supportive husband. Yeah. I've got very supportive children now who love what mummy does. Yeah. But it was a massive risk because you do work the hardest. Not hard. Everyone works hard, but you are, you have to throw a huge amount into it.
I think that's the thing. So do you think the educational system is slightly flawed? Do you think they're pushing everybody towards university? Like, I don't know if you can guess, but I never went to university.
No.
I hardly ever went to school, if truth be told.
I think what's really important is that we make sure that there are options for young people. And I think we're in a very different time period than, my parents wanted me to go to university. That was the path that we all took. Otherwise, you're not successful. But I think with things like degree level apprenticeships, that's really made it's transforming the way that people will start to work. And then when I hear about the level of debt that young people are coming out with, again, makes me feel really sick. The level of debt is what I paid for my first house. And I think they're never going to have that opportunity. And actually, are they further forward? Unless it's a real vocational subject, are they any further forward? And I would probably encourage my boys, there's a long way to go, they're only 5 and 6, but I would encourage my boys to think about an apprenticeship. And if they want that university experience, move away and do it. Yeah. But I think, so many people that I've spoken to that are super senior in their businesses that often sometimes not necessarily have a chip on their shoulder about going to university, but it's like, well, I've done this without going to university. And do you know what I mean? It has been with other people. I didn't go to university and I'm successful. We've got to get away from that. To be successful, you have to have gone to university.
I think you've got to be determined. You have to have a certain cut of your jib, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very different. I went to Penland School. Thick as shit, but we can't off-ride horses. That's what they say about us there. It was an old boys' school. Yeah. It was kill or be killed. I have a strict philosophy of you can never grass. Because when you're in old boys' school, you weren't allowed to grass up on somebody. The teachers would batter you, basically. That's what it was then. But you were scared, you were petrified of the teacher, but you did what you were told.
Yeah.
And, you know, another great example, I got to give you this great example of Pelham School, is that if the teacher found out that certain people had done something wrong, he'd let that boy off and he'd slipper the rest of the class.
Oh, really? For not grassing?
No, just, he said, boys, you deal with him.
Oh, right, okay.
So that one boy would be literally lynched upon the rest of the class. And that was the way. So you would never grass.
Yeah.
You would never grass, and it was all stuck together. So how do you think your background in marketing and what you've done in the past has led into to be enterprising?
Obviously really, really passionate about enterprise, really passionate about entrepreneurship and making sure that young people have the opportunity to think, could I make a success of this? Whether they've got a skill in crocheting, dog grooming, football skills, anything really, that they could actually create a little business out of that. A little business, big business, doesn't matter, that they've got that option. And then obviously the work that I've done in terms of developing business relationships really works well because we get businesses to pay for the resources to go into schools.
I've noticed.
So you being one of them. And also ones like Principality, National Grid, Ernst Young.
And how are you finding bringing those on board? Maybe we'll put a link. Can we put a link in the thing for
That'll be great.
Toby? Yes.
Thank you. How are we bringing them on board? Well, a lot of businesses will do it because they want to reinvest in the next generation. That's the best reason.
I think that's what we wanted to do. I think it's kind of just giving something back.
The warm, fuzzy, buzzy feeling inside.
What do I always say? Oh my God, we symbiotic here. I always say it gives you a warm, fuzzy feeling.
It's called the bumbles of Honeywood. Come on, we have to have a bit of buzz.
Feeling. So what's the biggest hurdles you've come up against starting up? Doing this?
Biggest hurdles. I made loads of mistakes.
Is that a hurdle? Or we've learned from it and you just move on?
We've definitely learned from it, but I guess when you're the chief exec, this is my first chief exec gig. I've got a load of shareholders who have invested in this business.
Right. Okay. We'll talk about investment.
So, I've got a responsibility.
Yeah.
To them as well as my staff, as well as the people that have paid for the product or service, as well as the children that we're delivering to. You saw me there. I take my role in that classroom super seriously.
Absolutely.
And my staff, all the team that go out are incredible. The kids love them.
Yeah.
Absolutely love them. So that's been a personal hurdle for me because it's like, oh my gosh, I can't, can I do this? Can I get over this phase? So
tell me about investment. Because myself and Nick we're very proud that we've never taken any kind of investment. We've had plenty of people wanting to invest, but something I've always said is I've worked for too many twats over the years and I don't want to work for anybody else.
Okay.
So what's your thoughts on
So
investment?
when I came in actually as part of the first investment round, so they'd already secured, the founders and the board had already secured an amount of investment, but that was based on bringing in a chief exec to run the company. So I was very mindful that I was part of that to commercialise this, what was essentially a bit of a pilot programme, working with around 10 schools with some really lovely business partners to prove the concept. So I was brought in basically to accelerate that, commercialise
it. Which has massively. If you came from 10, 400?
To nearly 400, yeah.
That's a lot.
Which is, it's good
stuff. And
stuff.
that's UK-wide?
It's UK-wide, yeah. About 10% of those schools are in England.
Right, okay.
So
Scotland? Got any up in Scotland?
Haven't got any in Scotland, but it could be very close. And actually, enterprise is on their curriculum too. So
right, okay.
We've invested a lot in it being a Wales proposition, a proposition suitable for schools in Wales, meaning, about 25% of our primary schools are Welsh language. So it's a bilingual programme. Again, very important from my perspective that it's available in
about
Welsh.
10, 15 years' time, you can send your kids into the Welsh school and they can do it. Do they want to work for mummy though?
Oh, I don't know. One wants to be a king, and the other one wants to be a bin man. And if you knew my kids, you'd know exactly which one. So I'm glad I'm bringing them up with a good variety.
There's good money variety. In the bins. Two mates of mine did the bins. They were really good money, and they'd finished by 2:00 in the afternoon.
Absolutely, they are. Yeah.
My kids. If I say to my kids, "What do I do?" Bear in mind, mine are 21, 18, and 12. So what do I do? They go, something to do with cars. Right?
Okay.
And one of them was looking at marketing bits. I said, I could do with another marketing girl. And she went, stop you there. I'm never ever going to work for you, so get that out of your mind. I was like, okay, that's the end of that then. So
put me in my place.
Yeah, so nepotism is dead in my house. Did you get feedback from the teachers then afterwards, and they say, look, this has helped immeasurably from one to the next?
Yeah, and so we give feedback forms that the teachers will fill in after every session, and they will rate the sort of, various different elements of the delivery, including the resources. We'll also find out if they're using the resources outside of the classroom and the value that they see of the programme. And literally, I mean, it's overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah.
They love us going in. They look forward to us going in.
I do have a feeling they could be slagging me off the next time I go in, because we give stress balls.
Stress balls that will just be thrown everywhere.
I just had this vision of them all on these, and just like
we did it in Wolverhampton. We did it in Wolverhampton, really? And the teacher said, "Can we give those out at the end? Don't give them out yet."
I know, but it's just like. Yeah, and I get it. I get you must have that funny buzzy feeling every.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I worry.
No 2 days are going to be the same.
No 2 days are going to be the same. You're always going to have some funny stories. We've got a couple of WhatsApp groups, and we love sharing stories because we could be in like 35, 40 different schools a week.
Wow, which
is incredible. From Tower Hamlets in London to the centre of Birmingham to North Wales.
Sorry, how big is the team?
We're 8.
8?
Yeah, we're only little.
And you've that many schools in a week?
Yeah.
So you give out books, which
Storybooks.
I've heard. I haven't really read them because I heard you read them out of the class. How have they evolved? How are they, what's the word I'm looking for? How do the kids take them on board? Do they have one each then?
No, they have a set for school.
Right,
they have a set
and then
for
they
school.
can go back and read
So the teacher will read them, and they're a hook. So we have developed them quite considerably.
Yeah.
We've changed some of the language. We've simplified some stuff.
Yeah.
We've shortened them.
Yeah,
again, based on feedback from teachers. We've also made sure that they're far more accessible. So some of the characters we might have changed slightly to make sure that we're not sort of gender stereotyping.
Oh, gosh.
There's lots that we've considered. And because it's translated, there's that consideration as well. How simple is it to translate? Does it translate exactly? Are we getting the ethos? So the stories are less of like a reading book.
Yeah.
They're more of a hook for the resources. So we've had to really make sure that every book emphasises the skills that will link to the resources.
And have you put a digital version?
We have.
Because you'd think the kids these days with iPads
so
and stuff like that in
we've
school.
got them being read. We've got the stories being read that they can find on YouTube. So they're being read out and they look at the pictures. But a lot of the time they don't always use the books.
Yeah.
They'll go straight into resources because the activities are around about an hour long.
Yeah.
So sort of 40 to 60 minutes is around about right. But they're quite nice to be able to slot into the working week.
Yeah.
We give the class a big poster with all of the enterprising skills on so that they can continually refer to them.
I think the only problem I see is that you're going to have to wait like another 10, maybe 15 years before you see your first true entrepreneur. Yeah, who's come from, seeing that, reading that book, being inspired, and I
hope they'll remember. Well,
they will remember.
I think we're only 4 years in,
yeah.
Right? This is my 4th year, and we have a full primary school programme, right, for years 1 to 6. So that's quite
phenomenal.
That's quite considerable. And we've also been asked by a lot of schools, can you come in and work with some of our year 7s, particularly perhaps where they have been affected more by COVID. They need perhaps a little bit more support in terms of communication and integration and resilience. So, there is opportunity for us to create resources for older year groups so that we can continue that journey. But we realise that in the first instance, the priority was primary because they're the most impressionable age.
Well, I remember having that first conversation with Pippa, and she was like, these kids are... Was it years 2 and 3? Is that right? Or 1 and 2? I can't remember.
1 and 2. 1 and 2.
Years 1 and 2. It was J4s and J1s and stuff like that when I was in school. So, and they were like, these are 6 and 7 year olds. I'm like, really? And we're talking about business?
Yeah.
And that's probably the biggest, thing you come up against is people going, are you sure? But being there, it really made sense.
Totally.
And like even beforehand, even after Nick's feedback, I was still apprehensive with that, and I thought surely not. But it really does make sense.
Yeah.
So, do you get any I wouldn't say negative feedback from parents about it, or did they have any concerns or?
No, we haven't actually. I get lots of WhatsApps from friends that have got kids in school and they've come home with perhaps our Be Kind bracelets.
Nobody ever tells you about networking and how important it is to have a handshake, which is good, and I still meet people these days who come and give me that really soft, sweaty handshake. And I'm like, I'm not dealing with that person. I'm not going to deal with them until they...
I think that particular activity, so to give a bit of context, it's a networking event that we host with young people. And they create their own business cards. They write their name, what they like doing and what they're good at doing. And then we sort of encourage them to introduce themselves to each other. So it's, standing tall, looking up, shaking hands if they want to. And actually, we've come across some children that just don't like touching, just don't like, and they've, sort of...
like Howard Hughes,
just a little bit more conscious, and they just don't want to. So enough. It's absolutely fine. So, but we sort of focus then on speaking clearly and having something interesting to say as well as listening. And it is the loveliest event, isn't it? We absolutely love it.
Like you saying about speaking clearly, I remember there was a kid called Josie, I think her name was.
Yeah.
And she spoke so clearly. She was
had a firm handshake.
She was there, and she was so proud, and she does it. But then you have, another kid who's very, very quiet. And I noticed, the dichotomy between the kids, how different some of them are. It's just hugely different.
But what we've often found is that those children that perhaps wouldn't normally participate often put their hand up to come up to the front and introduce themselves to this complete crazy stranger like yourself. and the teachers are amazing. I can see them looking at each other like they would never normally participate. So it really does strike a chord with some of those children that perhaps don't always get involved. Yeah. And that's really heartwarming. We had one little girl that came up and she joined the school about 6 months previous, not speaking a word of English. And she nominated herself to come up. And literally her TA was nearly in tears.
Well, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this because my wife never watches this anyway. She does anything that I'm on, she doesn't even care about. But my wife, this is true, when she was in school, she had mutism. She had self-mutism.
Okay. Selective
mutism. And she never spoke in school for about 5 years.
Really?
Because she heard two teachers saying, she's very quiet. She needs to speak up more. And she says she could not physically bring herself to speak. And the teachers were even bribing her, trying to get her with sweets and all these kind of things. And her friends didn't. As soon as she left school gates, she would speak. The fact of the matter is that maybe something like, the Bumbles, when we were in school at that age, that could have helped her immeasurably.
Yeah. It is. It's really interesting. And I think, and a lot of people like yourself who have come along have said, I know you're doing this with 5 and 6 year olds, but actually we could really do with this in the office.
Absolutely. I was really skeptical about it. When I first heard about it, then I thought, do you know what? It sounds really good. We were only about 1.5 years, 2 years old at that point. You have to remember that. So we were still quite a new company. So we weren't into giving lots of money away and stuff. We'd had some sponsorship. So it was kind of, a leap of faith. Yeah, it was a leap of faith for us as well. But then when Nick came back and he's like, we're going to carry on doing this. So then when Tracy, I shouldn't say this because she'll be on the phone to me again. Now, do you want to do another school? And I'll have 15 schools. But, when she mentioned it, I thought, do you know what? Yeah, I am going to do it. And again, it's so rewarding. And I cannot stress how rewarding it is. So what's the next steps now? What?
Next steps are, so we've created a short animation because the storybooks are really beautiful, and the stories are great, and there's an opportunity for us to animate the stories and making that transition then from the classroom to travel time to home learning so that they have characters that they can relate to, that they've seen in school, that they know are great fun. And it's about these characters being resilient, kind of kick-ass. I can do this. It's about working as a team, but also being able to work on your own. And I think that we always focus on teamwork, but also there's that element of saying there's a lot of stuff that you have to do by yourself, and that's okay. Like we've said, we've got a big reliance on ourselves as entrepreneurs to be all things to all people. So there's a time and a place where that is okay as well. So we've got that as an option. So that's called Adventures in Honeywood. So there is a website, adventuresinhoneywood.link, and that shows our little teaser animation. But yeah, we just want to get into as many schools as possible in the UK. So always looking for new business partners that are prepared to come on board and perhaps scoop up, 10, 20, 50 schools.
I'm sure that after watching this podcast, you'll get an influx of them. You'll have so many, you'll have to employ more staff.
Brilliant.
Well, that's the hope anyway. I think we're going to finish off. We normally finish off with a question or a bit of advice that someone, our last guest, which was John Wilson from Social Tap. So find something you're grateful for every day. That's John's bit of advice. What advice would you give for the next guest?
I think going back to what I said earlier, something that I really struggle with is, just focusing on what you can control and trying not to get distracted by other things that you cannot control. That has really
resonated with you.
Really resonated with me. And I try and tell other people as well that the other thing is about that reassurance to yourself. You don't always get it from other people, and you have to be confident in your own abilities.
Absolutely.
And not relying so much on other people.
So Jayne, thank you very much. Come back next week for part 2 of this interview. And until next time, thank you very much.
Thanks, John.